Namaste and welcome to the Happy Jack Yoga Podcast. I'm Happy Jack coming at you live from Happy Jack Yoga headquarters in Muskoka, Ontario. And I'm, as always, here with
Happy Hannah. Nice to see you.
amazing. Yeah, it's so good to be here. It's I've been back for a week now, but it feels really good to be back. The sun is shining, everything is flowing, homework is getting done, Sanskrit exam is behind me, and now just two papers to finish up. So it feels good to be back. What are you feeling right now, Hanna?
I feel gratitude as well, especially in the mornings when it's sunny like this and it's still kind of crispy air outside. It's really lovely to wake up and go walk the dog and start the day.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's a special place, Muskoka. In fact, some of you, well, we got, Riley, who's here live with us. She's from Muskoka. She gets it. Sue, you're coming here again this summer. In fact, I should do a quick shout out. Each summer, we do a Muskoka retreat right here in our hometown. This summer, it's scheduled for August 23rd to the 25th. It's filling up fast. And we got a sweet little discount available to you as our community. If you'd like the details, email us at info@happyjackyoga.com. But we can already feel the buzz. I don't know if you felt that yesterday, Sue, but we have a WhatsApp channel from the group yesterday, or sorry, from the group last year. And yesterday there was just like people are arranging where they're going to stay and what they're going to do and what day they're staying until. So it's nice to feel the buzz here at the beginning of the summer, but the actual retreat is towards the end. But if you'd love to join us, we would love to welcome you here. Would you agree, Hannah?
I agree. It's really beautiful here. And the most beautiful thing about the retreat is when we come together. Like it always blows everyone's mind, the effervescence that is collective and how it picks everybody up and there's no yogi left behind. And it's like you're meeting your best friends and there's a room full of them. It's incredible what happens in the summer retreats.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something as much as we love connecting, online in Zoom here, and there's the magic happens here. There's also something different about being in person, giving a sweaty hug and a high five. Certainly, if you'd love to join us in Canada, let us know. And also, we're already starting to set the initial plans for our next India retreat 2025. So if you want to be aware of the details on that, let us know. We'll get you on the wait list to be the first to know the details. But there is something special about being able to come together in person as well.
And the human
And
connection. It's in this day and age where everything is digital and kind of remote. And as much as that is handy, I don't know that it promotes mental health. Like we do need good hugs and real
mm,
people who look us in the eyes and who are willing to share and listen, right? When we come together.
yeah. It's both. It's both. Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that like truthfully, I rely on both. I rely on in-person relationships and online relationships. Because if I only had my in-person relationships, I don't, I wouldn't be, it wouldn't meet all my needs. In fact, there's so many of my best friends are right here in Zoom right now, or we get to connect with, each week for satsang and the various calls, the mentorship program. And so it's about having, I guess different circles that we can connect in. And also we should do a quick shout out in just 2 weeks from now, the next 200-hour Hero's Journey is
Yeah.
beginning. We got many graduates on the call here. We got Sue, we got Tiffany, Andrea, Felicia, Yada. Riley's a part of that program, and I mean, this is a chance to really, build your foundation as a yogi, as a yoga teacher. We do that, having done this program for many years in person, and that was great. It just wasn't so feasible or so practical for people to fly to another part of the world and take a bunch of time off of work. So now just being able to do it from the comfort of your own home, at a greatly reduced price, to go at your own pace, and yet still connect with beautiful souls around the world. It's a special thing. So again, let us know if you're interested in the hero's journey, and we'd love to welcome you there too.
And about the hero's journey, like the way we now lead it after so many years, and we always have, but of course, it gets better and better with as we keep refining it and leading it. And I always say it's the most transformational program that we have. It's most transformational, and it's also the foundational program where even if you don't want to teach yoga, it's going to be like kind of like a personal hero's journey where you get to explore things about yourself that you didn't even know. Like a lot of the outcomes that people share as a result from the hero's journey, which is the 200-hour teacher training, essentially our main like passion project. um,
Mm.
the outcomes that people come like leave that training with are incredible. Like we could not have even planned for it. Like oftentimes we'll have to like say like, what's the outcome? Yeah, you'll learn how to teach yoga, how to speak yoga, what alignment is. It will deepen your practice. If you already are a passionate yogi, taking this training will do something with your own practice that you cannot even imagine before you've taken the training.
Mm.
And again, it comes also a lot back to community. The feedback we receive, you go and read our Google reviews, there's not one that doesn't mention community. What an amazing group of people I met in this training. And they're
Mm.
not talking about you and me, Jack. They're talking about each other.
Yeah, which I love.
Yeah.
Love that. I was, as I'm writing one of my papers for the Ritual in the Life Cycle course, and so my paper is really a project because it's becoming a course for the Happy Jack Yoga community. I'm building a course now called Ritual in the Life Cycle. And and so as part of that, I was taking a look at some of the courses that we already have, and one of the aspects, one of the rituals that we have as part of our hero's journey is, through after each module, is to share an acknowledgement with a fellow yogi, right? Is to like identify somebody that you've met in a Zoom room, in a breakout room, in your small team, and somewhere along the journey, and just share something that you love about them. And this is something that we've put as part of the ritual, as part of the program. And when I was looking in the community forum, we have like over 2,000 of these acknowledgments that are in there. And there's more than any other section of the training. Like people really love, people are really impacted by one
Yeah.
another, and they take that seriously.
Yeah, and like they're asked to share, to acknowledge someone for something they said or something you see in them. So it's not
Yeah.
just like you fall in love with people randomly, but it's about
Mm.
like when you're going through the training, we'll meet regularly. So either me or Jack or some of our team members are leading the calls, but mostly it's me and Jack. And then we discuss what we've learned, and that's where you kind of collectively you go through a kind of a deep process of conversation, and and it's really really impactful what you see in other people, and when you notice what they now master or anything like that, it's really really life changing to share that with each other. And that's like maybe families do it every once in a while, depends on the kind of family you're from, but like I don't know, I'm not aware of any other arena where you go through such a deep transformation
Mm.
together with other people from all walks of life. Like there's not there's
Yeah.
there's people from any walk of life, every age and every background. So it's the way the friendships are happening is also for us. We're always just looking at miracles unfold. It's really beautiful and very human. And one of the things that we kind of believe in is no yogi left behind. So if someone, I was a yogi like that. For me, it was really hard to learn how to speak yoga and remember what pose comes after this pose. Like it took me like an abnormal amount of time And there was a moment, I often share this in the training. There was a moment when I took my 200 hour that I wanted to walk up to my teacher and say, listen, I don't think I have what it takes to teach yoga. I'm just not a type A personality or go getter or whatever it is that is required from a yoga teacher. I just don't have it. I was like this close from going to up to my teacher and saying, like, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I have to quit this training because I am not cut out for this. And then the people in my training came to me and asked me, what can we do to help you? How can we be there for you? And that's when I was like, what? Like they are willing to go out of their way. And of course, the busy schedules and, everything's always busy, busy. And the team that I was with, the people that I was practice teaching with, they were saying they were seeing something in me that I wasn't, you know?
Mm.
And then they, with their kindness, really, that's all it took. Just acknowledging me and saying that even if it's hard, there's a way that you can do it. And it did take me longer. Like they could not solve that problem in that moment, but they did because their presence changed the whole trajectory of my life, really. And
Yeah.
also you, Jack, at the time, you believed in me being able to do it. So then I kind of didn't give up on myself, which I would have done otherwise. 100% sure I would have. So,
Yeah.
and we're all unique, and all of us will have our own journey into whatever it is that we think or do not think that we can. But that was really powerful. And we see that a lot in the training that people come together in really incredible ways. And that is what I think makes life worth living at the end of the day is the connection you experience with other people. And then you just putting yourself in environments where you might be a little bit challenged, and then you'll learn something about yourself that you didn't know about yourself. And that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
Yeah. It's beautiful, and I love that it becomes so natural for people to step into that role and help people and support one another. And as much as it comes naturally because of the environment, it's also a leadership quality that we want to cultivate, to see the good in others and to let them know it, to see it, to recognize it, to let them know it. Because it's easy to find fault. And that's the first thing I really wanted to bring into the conversation today. I heard this radical idea on another podcast, and they were talking about bhakti yoga, and it really, I mean, I can't validate whether it's true. I can't validate, but it feels good and it feels right. And it's this idea that when we find fault in others, we actually take on that karma. So imagine that. So imagine that we see somebody on the news. We see somebody, doing something horrific. We see them do something terrible. We just see somebody make a mistake, and it's so easy and so quick, at least for me, to criticize or to judge or to simply find fault in another person or another situation. And imagine that. Imagine, and the many of the texts will support this, but imagine that where we, if just by simply having those thoughts, and we don't even have to speak it, we don't even have to articulate it out loud, by just by feeling that and finding fault in others, we take on the quote unquote negative karma of the action that they took. For me, whether that's true or not, I love the idea of it. I love the idea of living life that way. Because ever since I heard that, I mean, I've always been kind of aware and practicing not being critical and not being judgmental. But ever since I heard that, I just noticed I find fault all day, every day. It's just I do. And I don't think like in some, extreme bad way, but I really think it's a human tendency, right? Like we flip on the TV, the news, and finding fault in what something happening on the other side of the world, some kind of engagement with a family member or a coworker, someone in our life. It's so quick to just like find a fault in them. And even if we're not a mean person, we don't say anything, we don't do anything, you know, it's like it's just so quick and easy to do. And I just love that idea. To me, that just it puts like an accountability on me, a consequence, if you will. And again, I know that not everybody may believe or subscribe to the idea of karma, but I feel like for me, like we can see it in our everyday life. I feel like you want to jump in and say something.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
whether we call it karma or consequence,
Yeah.
like if I
Yeah.
judge or am critical towards others, it will have a consequence on me. So let's
Hmm.
reflect on what that is.
Yeah.
If I find fault in you, I will for sure create some kind of conflict, whether it's internal or if it escalates, because it's kind of maybe it's a mounting builds up and then there's going to be a fight at some point or like
Yeah.
that. So I find that really fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. That's a really deep
Yeah.
inquiry and deep observation.
It's like so quick to do. It's so quick to jump into that. And I feel, like me and Hanna, you and I and all the yogis here with us, like we're nice people. Like we're kind people. We treat people with respect. We do all these things. And at the same time, it seems that the kind of this human condition is to find that fault. Like I would say, and I'm not, don't take this as finding fault right now, but I think it's safe to say, everybody in my life that I know that I'm really kind of close with, I observe they find fault also. And what I mean by that, it really seems like it's a kind of a conditioning that we pick up.
Yeah, well, I think there's people who do it more and others who do it less, depending on
Definitely.
their conditioning. And that leads to my next question. So, if we can say finding fault, which is I love that terminology rather than like, but it could be similar to like judging others or being critical, like you also mentioned. Um, so, there's the brain's negativity bias that is like a concept that says that in order for us to like navigate the world to keep ourselves safe, basically we have this programming that looks for possible threat. So
Hmm.
that's why we might be busy finding fault just naturally. So that's a really good wake up call to like mindfulness. Like, is it necessary? Is it really that um, it's going to keep me safe when I find fault in others? Like I'm thinking that this is a coping mechanism for each individual. Some engage more in it, and maybe it's also a question of so-called awakening when you notice that, oh, it's not necessary for me to keep myself safe by creating otherness between me and other people by finding fault in them, putting them into a like that's what I think is also a fascinating, like a deeper psychological layer of finding fault. Like, why do we do it? To keep
Yeah.
safe, to make ourselves feel safe in our bubble or in our own belief system or in our own lifestyle.
Yeah. And I feel like the way I'm approaching it now, and it's still kind of new for me, but the way I'm approaching it is as an experiment, just like I do with a lot of these practices. And so now, whenever I see a situation, either a person or a situation or some circumstance, that's in the news happening on the other side of the world, instead of, launching into the default of, finding fault, is to see this as an opportunity, like as a teacher. I see this, I like the idea that this is divinity or God or whatever it is that we want to believe in, presenting us an opportunity to it's like, hey, we get to choose. Are we going to fall into our default samskara and find fault in the situation, or can I not? Can I hold the space and find the good, find the good in people? Like this is
Or the, yeah, the compassion, find compassion and find
yeah,
alternative actions than accusing and creating more conflict. What can I do to make it better? How can I contribute so that it is not only a negative aspect in the universe? Like kind of
yeah,
like it's kind of like a compassion activity, like loving kindness, um, living from a place of softness and kindness towards the others.
yeah. Yeah, what a way to live. It feels like there was just like like a softening or a pressure, or like, and not because I've overcome it, but just because I'm just like aware of it. And it's
And
just,
I love it. And not because you, whatever you just said, but like the softening is, there's a possibility of softening. Doesn't mean
Mhm.
that you're, perfect at it, but like just
Mhm.
having the awareness that it's possible to relate to the world with uh look seeking for a softer approach, seeing each other in with more space and kindness and understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, that's the a big part of what yoga is about. Like we're doing this, I saw Sue put in the chat earlier, like the kind of this looking inward, doing the work on ourselves. Because sometimes people look to yogis or monks or spiritual seekers and be like, you're not doing anything. We gotta protest, we gotta take action, we gotta, and there are a lot of social justice warriors that, heroes like Martin Luther King and Gandhi and many others, and they truly are heroes in the work that they did. And it's so it can be easy to look at the yogi who's practicing detachment, who's practicing not getting caught up in the drama, who's practicing not finding fault. And it could be easy to actually, judge them from the outside and be like, you're not doing anything. But actually, like we can pick up the garbage in the neighborhood, or we can clean the Ganga River. We can do all of these things, but if we don't change who we are on the inside, we're just going to end up back at that same result or worse. So it's like this is what we're doing as yogis, is practicing awakening, practicing purifying ourselves, practicing becoming a better person, right? And then of course we
Well,
teach that, we share that.
purifying ourselves means not finding fault in others because it has a
Yeah.
negative consequence on both.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's what, that's, I wanted to tie it back into this idea for us as yogis and as yoga teachers, and this is, I mean, these are the kind of things that we get to practice ourselves. And then we get to weave it into our yoga class or bring it up as a topic on our podcast or our satsang.
Yeah. So let's talk about like what that would practically look like. So maybe, we walk in the world and suddenly we notice like, oh, I'm fine. I notice that my thought is that I'm finding fault in my neighbor or whatever topic that is in front of me. Like just acknowledging that will then bring the sense of softness that you mentioned, like the
Mhm.
possibility of like, oh, I forgot. I don't have to do that. It doesn't help them or me. Like what
Yeah.
would a practical, can you share in like how you've practiced it?
Yeah, well, right now, honestly, it's like overwhelming. It's because I'm aware of this idea, and I'm overwhelmed with how quickly and how often I find fault. It's like it's almost like if I'm really honest with myself, and it's not like this terrible thing. I'm not walking around like this person's terrible. Like it's not that kind of energy, but just little things like you mentioned the neighbor. Well, I just right before the podcast went for a walk, said hi to the neighbors across the road, and a couple of old guys in their early 80s, mid 80s. Nice gesture, wave, joke, and I quickly thought, because the other day the one neighbor said to me that they never go for a walk. Like they're always just kind of standing around the garage. They never go for a walk. And I had this thought. I'm like, they should, it'd be so much healthier if you went for a walk, if you moved your body. And it's a very subtle thing, and I don't know if I'm really articulating it right, but there was just this feeling of I was somehow feeling self-righteous or superior, or I figured it out, even though I'm half the guy's age. I'm in my 40s, they're in their 80s. But like just having this thought of like, oh, you should be doing this, or you'd be better off if you did this. And even though I'm having the thought for their best interest and their health, it's like, why am I focusing on what they're not doing versus the fact that they're standing there, two guys in their 80s in the sun, laughing, smiling, joking with me. Like, why am I not why did I go to that as well? And it's just like interesting. And there's just like little moments like that. They're not like terrible. I mean, now we got a couple not teenagers, but early 20s just moved in, and they're great. They're amazing kids, way better than I was when I was 20. And that actually, frankly, there hasn't really been much interaction, so it's no problem. But probably I could find some fault, or I could find some fault with you, Hanna, or with my parents. I don't want to do that. That's not who I want to be.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And I think it's like what it sounds like stage one is the awareness, like noticing the the tendency to find fault,
Yeah.
and the possibility of, it's easy to find, but now it seems like the awareness is that there's also like I don't have to do that, that you don't, that's not who you want to be.
Mhm.
And then that is a deeper inner transformation that
Yeah.
you talked about. Like we call like all these like concepts like purifying ourselves can sound a little negative in a, you know, pretty Christian world, and I guess in any world. Like, why am I dirty? Why was I even like, some traditions suggest we're born sinful. And I would, obviously the yogis don't believe that. They believe the opposite, that the inside of us is blissful actually and never changing and eternal, and
Hmm.
that there's nothing to purify. However, our actions and the decisions we make in the world, there's probably some opportunity to look at, so that we could bring more of the pure bliss, or possibility for love and expansion into the world. And one of the ways to do that is to look at the way we operate, how we think, what our assumptions are, because it's kind of subtle. This finding fault is kind of subtle, the way you're sharing about it now,
Hmm.
and that we become aware of it, and then notice that, oh, this, I don't have to do this anymore, because I don't want to have this kind of life. I don't want the consequences of finding, criticizing, judging,
Yeah.
um, those traits in others. Where would you find this? Or if you, I don't know if you're prepared to answer this right now, but like if you look to the scripture,
Mm.
have you like, does anything come to mind where you would have read this? Because I know you've been reading lots in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, there's a text called the Shikshastakam written by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he only wrote 8 verses, 8 Sanskrit shlokas, and it's very much, these principles of bhakti are captured in there. I don't have the exact words, but that's where he talks about being as humble as a blade of grass, being as tolerant as a tree, kind of offering all respects to others. It's in those 8 verses that this idea comes from, uh,
Mhm.
and I feel like this is the spiritual path, and for me, as much as like in a way, it's like overwhelming to like catch myself how much I find fault. At the same time, I feel like I become excited because even though I got a long way to grow, I got a long way to go, a lot of work to do on myself. It's like, well, this is the direction I want to be walking, because I know that as we age, as life goes on, as the decades pass, we're on some trajectory, and maybe we know some people in our life that are, heading in a more negative trajectory, and maybe some of us have been on that trajectory at earlier stages of life. But it's like I kind of know who I want to become, at least who I want to aspire to become. And that's why we look to, great spiritual leaders, whether it's Jesus or the Buddha, or other great teachers like that, Krishna, that we want to look up to and be inspired by, or people who are alive today, great spiritual leaders that we want to aspire for. Um, and I feel like it really ties into this next idea. This is like a personal realization. So and it's not like, it's not massive or something. It's kind of obvious in a way, but somehow it just clicked for me. It's this idea that like everything in the material world, everything in our physical world is temporary, right? Everything is temporary. And anything that we do. So if we, for example, if we eat really good food, right? Like the pleasure of, we have some really amazing, as we did yesterday, vegan nachos and Mexican food. It was so good. And like that, the enjoyment of that is temporary. Or if we watch a great movie, or have a great green juice or beverage of your choice, if engage in sex, any of these things, they're good. Make work really hard to earn money. There's nothing. I'm not saying anything wrong with any of them, but it's like they bring this. There's a temporality to them. They're temporary. They're fleeting, and then they don't stick around. And then there's this whole idea of spirituality, right? That we are eternal beings, eternal spirit souls, and our relationship with the divine, that's like the only thing that's eternal. And so it's like, I guess we still have to live in a material world, and we choose, we want to enjoy life and choose how we live our life. But I feel like that's why I'm kind of called, to pursue spirituality more than just like engaging in these material things. And so that's, because there's been earlier stages of my life where, I'm the guy who overindulges. So I did that with food in my teens, right? I was seeking joy and comfort, and probably numbing out from some things, and really overate and gained a lot of weight, 250 pounds. And that didn't bring me happiness, right? I was like, somehow, it was like a temporality of that food, but it didn't ultimately bring happiness. Then of course I did the same with the alcohol and the drugs, went deep down that hole. I could say it was lots of fun at moments, right? But it wasn't like permanent. And the same with with relationships and sexual intimacy, and the same with working really hard and earning lots of money. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad. There's just like this awareness that no matter how much of it, and I amassed a lot of all of those things, and it never brought a sense of, like complete fulfillment. And I know, you and I might sometimes debate, Hanna, where you would say, well, hey, let's find a balance here, right? And so, and I don't know if I'm convinced that if we have a balance of all of those things, if that brings us this, then all of a sudden we're just maintaining happiness and bliss all the time. I don't think that's the case. I'm all in support of balance, but I don't think even balancing all those material things is going to just give us complete ease and peace and fulfillment. So this is just an idea that I'm playing with. And so that's why I guess I feel very inspired to pursue this spiritual path, and to do these practices like not finding fault, and all of these other good things that we talk about, because I feel like that's, although I don't know because I've not been there, and maybe I never will in this lifetime, but I feel like that's like the opening, to the bliss and to the eternal happiness. What do you think?
It sounds like all the things you listed up could have been kind of coping mechanisms to fill a void
Mm,
that maybe can't be filled by the balance of these things, or the absence or the presence of them. But it is something completely different that might reach that spot
yeah.
inside.
Yeah, so that's why and in true Happy Jack fashion, and so now it's like, all right, spirituality, let's dive in deep, pull my sleeves up and jump right in. And so in a couple of weeks from today, I'll be flying over to India, spending 2 months there, and like full 2 month immersion. I will say, we're still going to be leading the podcast, still going to be leading satsang, being connected with all of you, but for the most part, kind of really doing this work. And as you'll remember, Hanna, and we've been to India many times, but that one time in 2015, when you met me at the Delhi airport after I'd spent a few months, living at the ashram in Rishikesh, and doing this kind of work of letting go qualities that were not serving me. And but what was your experience when we met at the airport?
It's funny, like the word you used earlier in when we were discussing the finding fault, and then you said that the result of that, I that's my understanding. Maybe you said something else, but like what you were just earlier saying that when you practice not finding fault, then there is a softness that you notice that arises.
Mhm.
And when I met you in 2015 at the Delhi airport with Axel, he was like maybe, I don't know how old must have he been? He must maybe 8 or 9 or something.
12, isn't that
12.
right? 2000, no, 2004 to 15, 11, 11.
Right. So Axel was 11, so kind of tiny. And um, we met you, and it felt like we met someone else. Like you were, yes, yourself, but a softer version of yourself, like a
Mhm.
soft, happy Jack who was
Mhm.
patient and kind. And not that you aren't always, but then you were like extra, like a different quality to it. I don't even know. I don't know that I have words for it, but I will never forget. It was really, yeah, it was a really strong experience to be in your presence then.
Mm. And I guess that's what, I didn't have that same experience, but I know how I felt while I was living there at the ashram, and I felt the impact it had on me. And that's, I guess, yeah, that's the kind of work that I feel drawn to right now. And I think this is, on this podcast, right? I'm just sharing my story. Hanna, you share your story, right? We're not saying that like this is the path that every yogi or every yoga teacher should take. In fact, it's definitely not. Like, don't follow my footsteps, And everybody knows from watching Finding Joe, the documentary in our hero's journey, that's the one sure sign that we're not following our bliss is that we're trying to copy someone else. So it's finding our path.
Yeah, like it says that everybody needs to find their own path into the forest.
Hmm.
And if you walk on a path that is already made, that means you're following somebody else's life path.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can be tricky because in ways, we're inspired by our teachers and inspired by our friends and our peers. So we're going to model some things, but for the most part, we need to be true to ourselves. And I feel like I haven't always done it, and I don't do it perfectly by any means, but I feel like right now in some aspects of my life, I'm going for it. Even when some insecurities arise, like, I still ask you periodically, Hanna, like, am I crazy? This shaved off head, and but it's
The
it's it's
answer
part
is
of the
always yes, you are. Just to
yeah. It's part of the program, and just going for it. And I think this is all we can do as yogis and yoga teachers is be true to ourselves and go to we talked in a previous episode, like, do the thing that makes our heart sing, and surround ourselves with people that bring out the best in us and allow us to be our best selves. Like, there's certain people and certain environments when I'm there, I can feel myself, and I'm not finding fault in them or the situation, but there's certain people in certain circumstances where when I'm in there, I kind of contract. I draw in, I get smaller, I withdraw. And I'm not saying there's anything at all wrong with them, right? But there's somehow that it's not perhaps the right environment for me in that moment. I mean, unless I want to like challenge myself to grow, but I feel it. But then there's other environments, for example, when we get together for this Muskoka retreat in August, right? When we get those group of yogis together in the sacred space, and it's just like this brings out the best in us. And
Yeah.
just like there's such a high and so much joy and bliss, and we can be ourselves. This is the environment and the people that we want to spend time with.
Yeah. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
I love that.
It looked like you went choppy for a second. Could you hear me the whole time? Oh, good. Nice. Yeah, so That's what this is all about. You know, the really the last thing I wanted to ask about before we jump to a hot seat. I'm so curious, and I'm going to ask my therapist this next week. But will you give us just a little taste, Hanna? Like, what is a typical therapy session? Is there such thing as a quote unquote typical therapy session? Because I think about like when I get together with my therapist, I share what's on my heart. And I tend to ask a lot of questions. I come if you want to say prepared, and I have questions, and we get to have this really meaningful dialogue. And it seems a little bit like the relationship I have is that she serves as a coach or a mentor or a teacher, because she certainly could, right? She's been on this bhakti yoga path for more years than I have. And I don't know if there's a typical way or a right way, and I'm kind of curious, like, are we actually doing therapy, or am I having a coaching session, or are you being like a mentor or a consultant for me? Either way, it feels good. It feels right, and I love it. It uplifts me, so it's the right thing to do. But I guess, is there a quote unquote typical way to engage in therapy?
There is, and there's different styles of therapy. So then the typical session of a different style of therapy could look different than, another. So you
Mm,
could be doing more body-based, or you could be doing, I don't know, IFS, which is like internal family systems, where you talk about like different parts of the self. So the session could be led in a different way. The training I took, we were taught some core skills, and that would kind of shape the container for the sessions. And so that could mean, for example, you come to the session and you share what's on your heart, and then the therapist listens and kind of notes some things and reframes them for you, or reflects them back to you. And just that can be super therapeutic, because you notice what you just said. Like, what the magic in therapy can be oftentimes, the most valuable and most impactful maybe aspect is when you have an insight about what you just said, rather than the person coaching you or consulting you, like, here's what you should do. And I'm sure your therapist never does that. But
mm,
the magic lies in that you have an insight that comes from within you, rather than the other person telling you what to consider. And sometimes, you can ask your therapist, like, what do you think about this? And I do that a lot with my therapist too. And she'll be able to answer, also knowing me really well and knowing my world really well, because she's listened to me so attentively for so long. So
mm,
she knows how to say something helpful with regards to that. So sometimes, and to me too, my therapist feels like my safe space, like my rock in the world, where I know that I can go with anything and she's got me. And that is a beautiful world to live in for me, where I am an expat always and don't have like that much of ties into any place, and feel at home in many places, and not, all of that. So I've
yeah.
really always appreciated that about my therapist. But that's just the relationship that has formed with her over the years. And that's a therapeutic relationship I have with her, with a therapist.
Mm,
That's what you build up with time. That's why
yeah.
sessions just here and there might not have the same impact. And they could be super impactful, meeting a therapist just once or twice. My same therapist, I have lots of friends I've sent to her, and they've had just one or two sessions, and they said that it changed their lives. So it's
Mm,
not that it always has to take a long time, but a typical session depends on the style of therapy and the therapist and you. Because what's also very typical in the therapeutic world is to say that the therapy is very person centered. That means
mm,
your session will respect your needs and what's important to you in that session. So there's not like a one kind of blueprint, but also there is, because it's a different relationship than with a coach.
mm,
The way the therapist might ask you questions is different than They have a deeper insight, and a therapist can help you see things that are unconscious to you. That's also a huge gift
Mm,
from the therapist, that things that you might not have, you cannot see because they are invisible to you. And sometimes it's helpful to have a qualified, trained individual offer that. And it's always, I think, a gift. And even if it can be tricky to navigate that in the beginning, and that's why it's a relationship, ideally, where you can see them again and get the support
mm,
you need. Because it's almost like you're integrating something new about yourself again, coming back to like things that you might not have noticed about yourself. And there's many ways to get there and to integrate the new version of you. But definitely, I think if you find the right therapist, it is a superpower, no matter what the basic structure looks like.
nice. I love that. There's a lot of great info and wisdom and just to help understand how that works. I feel really good about it. I feel like it is a special relationship to have. And just do a quick shout out. I know some of the yogis here, won't call them out because it's personal, but some of the
That's
yogis here
very
live.
private, so let's not talk about that.
Yeah, well, no, and I want to say that, for anybody else who would want to work with Hanna, right? You're taking on some clients right now to build up your hours and fully earn your certification, and so you got that amazing discounted rate of only $50 a session. So if anybody would want to do that, send us an email, info@happyjackyoga.com, and get a taste. I was like resistant to it for so many years. My first wife, I remember her when we were teenagers, when we were 19. I remember her talking about like therapists, and somehow I just had this belief or this understanding. It's like, oh, it's if you're broken or something, or it's a bit, I just unfortunately had the wrong idea of what it was. And I'm so grateful now later in life to understand and appreciate what it is, and to just know the healing that can come from it, just through the connection, the everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, sometimes
So,
we feel like, yeah, going to therapy means that I admit that I have problems. Well, show me one individual on this planet who doesn't have issues. And then, like, I think a lot of people are afraid of, like, oh, if I go there, I might fall apart. Like, I might discover things that are unpleasant. Like, we might have some negative expectation, you know,
mm,
on that therapy will unveil something that I'm not ready to see. But it's not magic work. Like, even though it can be magical and really deeply healing and sometimes a little bit uncomfortable, but most of the time it's not. And yes, a therapist can challenge you, but not in the ways that would leave you not in a better place. Like, then,
mm,
all of that is the wounds that we have inside. They're there either way. And we do have a choice whether we want to heal those wounds or not. But most of the time, I think therapy is a huge gift, just like participating in the hero's journey. Like, it's something we allow ourselves to do or not. And I often think about it, like how grateful I am to myself for allowing myself to change, allowing myself to almost like challenge myself in putting myself into new environments, or allowing myself to become something that I didn't know that I was, like a yoga
mm,
teacher, even if it was hard for me to learn how to do that I allowed for that. Like, that's where the healing begins, that I allow for myself
mm.
to
That's awesome.
expand and take up space.
That's so nice. And when you combine the two, right? I mean, everybody listening here, everybody part of this community, we're already yogis, like cultivating a yogic practice, a consistent practice, but then to complement that, to do some of that deeper inner work, it's like the 1-2 combo. Beautiful. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for clarifying that.
Thanks. I just want to say, like, even when it comes to this allowing, like what you brought earlier about finding fault,
Mm,
And then, like, that too can be a really powerful shift in our lives in allowing to soften. Instead of finding fault, you allowed yourself to be aware of that. And then that led to softening. Like, that to me is how a flower opens, like gently. And it always feels like a bit of a miracle, doesn't it?
mm. Yeah, it is. It is miraculous. The impact of yoga and this work and meaningful relationships, whether it's a therapist or fellow yogis, it's miraculous. It
Mhm.
really is. So I love that. Thank you for sharing, Hanna. And I just want to do a shout out. A couple of the yogis who are here, Sue and Andrea. You guys gave us this past week some really great feedback. Sue after the podcast ended, Andrea with a follow up. And I just want to say we appreciate it. And as you can tell, we didn't implement much because I'm still in like paper writing mode. So we haven't really made big changes to the syntax of the podcast, but we appreciate the ideas and we will look to those. But in these last few moments, Hanna, why don't we jump to the hot seat and see if you got a question, see if we can dig deep, see if you can uncover something that I wasn't aware of even. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I that's like up to you, and that happens naturally in its own time if it's supposed to. But the question I wanted to ask you, and you might not be kind of there yet to answer it, but because you're still writing papers,
Mm,
but I wanted to have like a reflection, and I know you've talked about this, but like now with a little bit more distance from previously, when you look at like your Harvard year number two,
mm,
like a lot of people ask, why did you go to Harvard in the first place? And
mm,
the first year was like kind of hard work for you because adapting to all of that and those demands takes a lot of, work, studying and writing papers and exams. And then that was kind of an intense year, which led you to decide to move into an ashram.
mm,
And then your second year was a completely different experience. Like you might have been like in a totally different university, I guess, and context because you lived from an ashram. And
mm.
so, what would you say that, like, if somebody asked you, like, what are the outcomes of having spent 2 years at Harvard, and how has it changed you, and what have you found? Why did you go to
Mm.
Harvard, like, with that in mind?
Yeah, that's a big question in these last few moments. I don't know if I can answer all of that. Um, wow, that was a lot of questions as well. So I went, the reason I went was because we run a yoga school, right? We've co-created Happy Jack Yoga University. We love what we do. We love the people. We love everybody who's here live with us. And as teachers, just like everybody here who's a teacher, as teachers, we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to become a better version of ourselves so we can share that with our students. And I'd spent lots of time doing advanced yoga teacher trainings in India and all over the world, and lot of
Leadership
years
training and business
leadership training.
training, like at a
Yeah,
high level.
yeah, so many, all of that stuff, which is amazing, and it's informed me and it's transformed me in so many ways. And I guess I saw this as the fact that we're educating yoga teachers, right? We're helping yogis, not just to teach yoga, but to actually also to be able to empower others and to help to guide their students. And so I just became super inspired to want to dive deeper into yoga and yoga philosophy and all of these practices. So that's why. And it just turned out that, obviously, yeah, Harvard has a good name or a big name. But it just turned out it had like the perfect program for what I would want to study. So that's why I went there.
So you
First year,
wanted to study yoga.
I wanted to study yoga philosophy. Yeah. And I didn't anticipate that there would be such a beautiful opportunity to practice yoga. Like I thought my practice would be like going to a local studio. There's lots of local studios. That didn't happen much, but it was when I found the ashram, and it's like, whoa, this feels right. This is not just going to a local yoga studio to do a 60-minute vinyasa flow, which is great. This is like going into an environment. This is like going into India, right? And sitting on the floor and eating food that's been made with love with my hands, and always talking about yoga. So not sitting around and chit-chatting about everyday stuff, but just really being in the environment. So that's what the second year has been about, really being able to live the ashram lifestyle. And as I look forward, there's one more year. I got one more year, and as much as I love, like truthfully, as much as I love it there, and I can't wait to go back. Like I miss it. I love it so much. At the same time, I also recognize every time we take on a commitment, it has an impact on other areas of our life. And so I haven't been around so much with my family, right? Like my nephews, my brother, my sister, my parents who are aging, so that's a consequence that I have to face. And also, I haven't had as much time to give to Happy Jack Yoga. I think we certainly do our best, and I think we're very pleased with the work that we do, but I haven't been able to give 40 plus hours a week to Happy Jack Yoga, right? Because I'm doing that with Harvard Divinity School. So at the same time, it's like focus on this last year, learn as much as I can, share everything I'm learning along the way in our satsang, in the podcast, in the different courses.
And how
But
has it
really,
changed you?
well, I changed my haircut. It
It's
changed.
changed your look,
It changed
your
the color of
vibe.
my clothing, and this is just external. Like these are just silly external things. Like, oh, okay, wow, Jack, now you're wearing white hoodies and you got a buzzed head, but it's not. I feel like that's just like a representation to some of the inner work that's happening. It was changed me as it's shifted my priorities. I think that I think that before going in, it would have been about like how I don't know. I still had a lot of material attachments, wanting to grow really big and make lots of money and do all of these things, which is there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel like now it's like the focus is like I want to impact lives. I want to transform myself so that I can help others transform. And if as a result of that, it allows us to grow and allows us to earn more and contribute more, then beautiful. Then that probably means that we're aligned and doing what's meant to be. But that's not the priority. That's not the focus, which is what it was when I was like in the personal development environments and the business environments. So I think it's just a shift in priority. And yeah, and I think I'm just gonna speculate here in this last moment. I think that there's gonna be a lot of transformation happening over these next 2 months in India. I don't know what it is. I just have this feeling in my heart, and it's a good feeling. Because this full like this, it was still 1 foot in, 1 foot out in Boston at the ashram, because I had 1 foot in the ashram life, 1 foot in Harvard life. This next 2 months is like 100% in
Ashram life.
ashram living with just like, oh, Sunday I'll come lead satsang. Oh, Tuesday I'll come lead podcast. But for the most part, I'm like full in, and I
Chopping
just
veggies in India.
doing whatever is required,
Yeah,
chipping away at my ego, chipping away at my qualities like finding fault in others, chipping away at all of that stuff, and softening. So that's what I'm open to.
I
So
love
stay
that.
tuned.
Yeah, that sounds really, really beautiful.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. This like flew by. We love having all these beautiful souls who are here live with us. If you'd like to join us live, send us an email. If you'd love to do a therapy session with Hanna, shoot us an email. If you'd love to join the 200-hour Hero's Journey, send us an email. We got so many amazing things happening. A quick shout out. We have 19 5-star reviews in Spotify, and I've been watching it sit there at 19 for like a month now. And I'm just like, I want one more. Let's hit 20. So if you're out there listening and you haven't yet, and you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple if you use that, we appreciate that. It helps other people find this conversation. And yeah, until we meet again next week, my friends, namaste.
Namaste.